All of the sequence of instructions written over here are executed in a one by one, that is in the form of a sequential manner. If you look at this diagram, you will clearly understand C is a top-down approach, C++ is a bottom-up approach. The description of modules begins at the bottom of the hierarchy. The basic feature of C++ is to perform the reuse functionality. Hello and warm welcome to one and all. It is Dr. Ravi Kumar YB, Department of Computer Science, Vidyashram First Grade College, Mysuru, the Temple of Excellence. In today's session, you will be taught about the coding principles, which is done in the form of a top-down approach as well as bottom-up approach. What is the meaning of top-down approach and bottom-up approach? In some of the technologies like C, we follow the concept of structured programming. That is, the top-down approach is followed. In case of C++, that is the object-oriented programming, we will consider the bottom-up approach. Let me clarify you with the detailed information. If that is the case, the programming refers to the method of creating a sequence of instructions to enable the computer to perform a task. That means all of the sequence of instructions written over here are executed in a one by one, that is in the form of a sequential manner. Suppose if it is done by developing a logic and writing instructions in the programming language like C or C++ or any of the languages like this, then a program can be written using various programming practices available. That is, any of these programming practices available. If that is the case, a programming practice refers to the way in which we write the program and used along with the coding style guidelines. What is the coding style guidelines here? The coding style guidelines includes some of the languages follow the principle of commenting the information like this, and some of the coding concepts follow the concept of this style for comments. So, some of the commonly used programming practices include top-down approach for like this C programming language, and for bottom-up approach, structured programming and information hiding in case of C++. We have these concepts here. If you look at this diagram, you will clearly understand C is a top-down approach, C++ is a bottom-up approach. Bottom-up programming. We have a structured programming as well, which is corresponding to this. Then we have the information hiding, which is corresponding to this. That is, information hiding is abstraction is done with the help of this bottom-up approach, that is C++. We are going to integrate all these things, that is both top-down and bottom-up approach, into one module, that is this. Into one module like this. If that is the case, top-down programming focuses on the use of modules. It is therefore also known as the modular programming. Modular programming. As I told you that it is a module, it is going to be performed in the form of a modular programming. We divide the problems into smaller sub-problems. These smaller sub-problems are called as a modules. Then the program is broken up into small modules so that it is easy to trace particular segment of code in the software program. The same thing. Then it is very easy to detect what is the mistake in particular segment of code, that is in that particular module. That is done with the help of this. Then the modules at the top level are those that perform the general tasks, and the modules and the process that proceeds forward to perform a particular task or a specific task. That means generally we will be having the general type of coding instructions wherein we will have the general methodologies to represent it to the system or to the user. And in some cases we have to give solutions to specific problems. Then it is done with the help of the particular task, that is module information. Each module is based on the functionality of its functions and procedures. In this approach, the programming begins with the top level of hierarchy and progresses towards the low levels hierarchy. That means from top level hierarchy to the low level hierarchy, we proceed forward. The implementation of module starts with the main module, that is from the main function. After the implementation of the main module or main function, the subroutine or subordinate modules are implemented, and the process follows in this way. In which way? Like this way, top down, in this way. Which is that we have a main function here. Main is the one function which invokes all other functions. The function 1, function 2, function 3. We have a function 1 here, function 2 here, then we have function 3 here. All these functions are invoked at the point of function call and return to it to the next statement, from second to this, and from here to this, from here to this, then here to this. So this process of subdividing the modules, where function 1 is doing specific module operation task, function 2 is performing a solution to another task, function 3 is giving a solution to another task, so that it is going to be used using this module operations. That is the same thing which is done in the form of a top-down approach, where main function comes first, then all other subordinate modules comes. That means top-down approach is followed here. In case of top-down programming, there is a risk of implementing a data structures as the modules, and dependent on each other, they have to share one or more functions and procedures. That means the data needs to be shared among one or more functions. In this way, the functions and procedures are globally visible. That means when a data or function is to be shared among multiple segments of code, that can be done with the help of this. But when it is required for a global functions, that means the functionality of that specific module is required for various other modules, that is defined as a global functions. That means in addition to the modules, the top-down programming uses the sequences and the nested levels of commands. That means we have that one of the nested functions within another functions. That means we are not going to define a function, but we are going to call the function from another function. That is called as a nesting of the functions. In the case of bottom-up approach, what happens? That is C++ programming approach. We have the bottom-up approach like this, which refers to the style of programming where an application is structured with the description of modules. That is, the description of modules begins at the bottom of the hierarchy. Please note that, bottom of the hierarchy of modules, and progresses through the higher levels until it reaches the top. As I have already discussed with you in the previous sessions, that is like this bottom-up approach follows the functionality of these from here. So here we have one of the modules at this level. We have module 1, module 2, module 3, module 4. 4, 3, 2, 1. All these 4 and 3 are combined together to get 4, 3. Then 2, 1. Then all these are combined together to get a single solution to this. So this is called as a level 1 approach. This is called as level 2 approach. This is called as level 3 approach. Please see to it. We have level 3 is the one, level 1 is the one which is having all these modules. So bottom-up approach states that we are going to design a method or a program that performs the task of this at various levels. That is from level 1 to level 1, level 3 to level 2, then level 2 to level 1. So this is how we are going to progress. The bottom-up programming is just the opposite of top-down programming, as I told you now. This becomes level 3 in case of top-down approach. This becomes level 2 and level 1. Opposite of the top-down programming. Here the program modules are more general and reusable than top-down programming. Very important to understand here, my dear students. We have the concept of reuse, which is not at all possible in case of C language or in top-down approach, but it is possible in C++. The basic feature of C++ is to perform the reuse functionality. That is why we are going with the object-oriented approach. This bottom-up approach programming is easier to construct functions, and this is because bottom-up programming requires a way of passing complicated arguments between functions. That is the main thing you need to notice here. Complicated arguments from function call to the function definitions. Then it takes the form of constructing abstract data types in languages like C++ or Java, as I told you right now, which can be used to implement the entire class of applications, and not only on that is to be written, on the entire application it is applicable. Then it therefore becomes easier to add new features in a bottom-up approach than in the top-down programming approach. So it is very easy to incorporate any changes required in the future that can be incorporated very easily using the bottom-up approach, but which is not possible with respect to the top-down approach. Then we have a structured programming. We came to the C type of language programming. In this structured programming, it is concerned with structures used in the computer program. Generally, structures of computer program comprises of design decisions, that means if condition, if else, nested if, else if ladder. All these are structured comparison statements, then sequences and looping statements like for loop, while loop, do while loop, nested do while loop, nested for loop, nested while loop. All this comes into the picture. The decision structures are used for conditional execution, for example, if statement. As I told right now, if statement. The sequence structures are used in the sequentially executed statements. The structured programming generally makes use of the top-down approach, as I told you right now, using the C language, because program structure is divided into separate subsections. A defined function or set of similar functions is kept separately. That means all the similar functionality of a program are kept separately here in case of C language. Due to this separation of functions, they are easily loaded into the memory. In addition, these functions can be reused in one or more programs. And of course, we are stating that reuse is the functionality, but it is not at all easily possible in case of C language. As such, we do in C++ language. Each module is tested individually. After testing, they are integrated with other modules to achieve an overall program structure. Structured programming also includes that we need to notice that the key characteristic of a structured statement is the presence of single entry and single exit point. That means main is the one function which takes the entry of the function, then exit is the main function, only one function that gives you the exit of the function. So main is the one function which is called as the entry point as well as exit point. This characteristic implies that during the execution, a structured programming starts from one defined point and terminates at another defined point. That means we have a main function here. Main is the only one function that is responsible for entering into the main function, from main function to all other functions, and main is the only one function that is responsible for exiting from the main function. So always when you press Ctrl F9, main is the one function that is invoked by operating system, and main is the one function that is invoking all other functions. So the returned value from all other functions are given to main function. Main function is the one that is going to return the final value to the operating system once the program's execution is over. With this, I'm going to conclude this session of top-down as well as bottom-up approach coding techniques. Thank you very much. Thank you one and all, my dear students. Thank you one and all.